1 out of every 26 positive HIV tests is wrong. Your doctor probably can't explain why. Your financial advisor definitely can't. And the algorithm that just told you to sell your portfolio, it doesn't know the difference between risk and uncertainty. We're drowning in data, but we're starving for judgment. Gerd Gigerenzer wrote the rescue manual. Most of us are too innumerate to read it. Hello, my name is Todd Hagopian, the original Stagnation Assassin, the author of this book, The Unfair Advantage, Weaponizing the Hypomanic Toolbox. But today, we are doing a Stagnation Assassin book review of Risk Savvy, How to Make Good Decisions by Gerd Gigerenzer. So get ready for a hard-hitting, bold, relentless review of this decision-making masterwork, and we'll decide whether it deserves a permanent place in your strategic toolkit. Gigerenzer is the director of the Max Planck Institute for Human Development in Berlin, and one of the world's foremost experts on risk, heuristics, and decision-making. He's the guy that Malcolm Gladwell built Blink on. But he goes further. He doesn't just describe gut instincts. He explains why they work, when they fail, and how to calibrate them. This book is a direct assault on the illusion that more data always means better decisions. So let's talk about the meat. What exactly does this book get right? Let me tell you why this book matters. More than 90% of the strategy books collecting dust on executives' bookshelves, Gigerenzer makes a distinction that will rewire how you make decisions forever. The difference between risk and uncertainty. Risk is when you know all possible outcomes and their probabilities. Uncertainty is when you don't. Most business decisions, the ones that actually matter, live in uncertainty. And yet we apply risk tools to uncertain situations as if our spreadsheets can see the future. The most dangerous executive in any boardroom isn't the one who doesn't have the data. It's the one who has the data and thinks that it makes them omniscient. Gigerenzer's argument that simple rules of thumb, heuristics, often outperform complex models in uncertain environments is a direct shot at the analytics industrial complex. He proves with rigorous research that a single factor decision rule can beat a 20 variable algorithm when the environment is truly unpredictable. That's not anti-intellectual, that's anti-illusion. His frameworks on how doctors, lawyers, and bankers systematically misunderstand statistics is absolutely devastating. He shows how relative risk is routinely used to terrify patients and manipulate consumers. Something that increases your relative risk by 300% sounds catastrophic until you realize that the absolute risk went from 1 in 1,000 to 3 in 100,000. Relative risk sells fear. Absolute risk sells truth. And most decision makers cannot tell the difference. The concept he calls defensive decision making, where professionals make suboptimal choices to protect themselves from lawsuits rather than to help their clients, is something I've seen poison Fortune 500 cultures over and over. Leaders choosing the safe, defensible path instead of the right one, covering their ass instead of moving the company forward. Gigerenzer names the disease, and he gives you the diagnostic tools to spot it in your own organization. And his advocacy for teaching risk literacy to children, that's not just good policy, that's generational warfare against stagnation, which I love. A population that can actually read a risk statistic is a population that makes better decisions about health, money, and leadership. The fact that fourth graders can outperform adults on certain probability problems when the information is presented correctly tells you everything about how badly we've been educated on risk over the years. So let's talk about the murder board. What does this book get wrong? Because every brilliant book has blind spots. First, the medical examples dominate this book. If you're not in healthcare, you'll need to do the translation work yourself. The principles do apply universally, but the case studies skew heavily towards screening, diagnosis, and treatment. Business operators like me will find themselves reaching for the correct connection rather than having it served directly. Second, Gigerenzer positions himself against Kahneman and the behavioral economics establishment, arguing that people aren't as irrational as thinking fast and slow suggests. There's a legitimate academic debate here, but in this book, it sometimes reads as dismissive rather than definitive. The nuance gets flattened by the contrarian confidence. Both perspectives have merit, and the reader deserves a fuller reckoning of each. Third, and this matters for operators, the book is heavy on diagnosis and a little lighter on prescription. Gigerenzer excels at showing you where decisions go wrong. He's a little less comprehensive about building organizational systems that consistently produce good decisions, which is what a lot of us are actually after. Knowing the disease exists doesn't cure the patient. You still need the surgical playbook. And the chapter on internet and social isolation feels like it wandered in from a different book. It doesn't connect to the central thesis with the precision that the rest of the work demands. However, Stagnation Assassin verdict is 4 kills out of 5. Risk Savvy earns 4 kills because it attacks one of the deepest roots of organizational stagnation, the inability to make good decisions under uncertainty. Gigerenzer's distinction between risk and uncertainty, his demolition of defensive decision-making, and his proof that simple heuristics can beat complex models. These are frameworks that will make you a more dangerous operator in every room that you enter. It loses the 5th kill for the medical-heavy examples, some academic score setting, and insufficient organizational application. But the intellectual firepower here is elite. This book makes you smarter about decisions, and smarter decision-making is the foundation of every transformation that I have ever led. That's the verdict. Risk Savvy gets 4 kills, one of the most underrated books in the strategic arsenal. Grab the Unfair Advantage, Weaponizing the Hypomanic Toolbox on Amazon. Go to toddhagopian.com and stagnationassassins.com for the world's largest database on stagnation. Subscribe to the Stagnation Assassin Show wherever you wage war on mediocrity. Data does not make you smart. Judgment makes you smart. And the operator who knows the difference between risk and uncertainty will outperform the one with the bigger spreadsheet every single time.